Ready? Welcome to the brain. So the brain obviously is located up in our noggin, and if you put your fists like this and you put them together and then you put your thumbs at the back, you essentially have kind of what your brain looks like and how it sits in your body. So notice the thumbs are at the back, right? So that's like this little part back there. And also notice that if I separate these, I have a right side, my right side, and a left side. So a right half of a sphere and a left half of a sphere, or a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere of the brain. Now obviously the brain doesn't fall apart, it is connected like that, but if you dissected a sheep brain, you could actually pull that apart somewhat, and you could see some of these internal structures from the top, just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And when we dissect a sheep brain, a lot of times we'll cut it right down there, so that then we can see the inside stuff. Okay? And so that's what this diagram is showing. It says slice the brain right through the central fissure, right through the central groove. And this brain would be, it's a whole one. We're just looking at it from one side. Okay? And so, just to give you some perspective, your eyeball is here looking that way. Okay? And your nose is here. And happy about it. Okay? The first thing is we noticed about the human brain is that it has like a really large area up here compared to other organisms. Okay? We have a ton of neurons that make up this cerebral cortex, or the cerebrum. The cerebral cortex is just referring, anything that's a cortex is kind of referring to a covering, the outside part, right? So this is all covering all these little internal structures, which if we maybe kind of draw stuff like this, right? That kind of stuff is called like the primitive brain. Most organisms have this stuff in them, and some of them will have a little bit of cerebrum, or a smaller covering, but whereas we have a larger one. So it's kind of a brain mass per body mass ratio. Humans are supposed to be the highest. If we had a whale laying in here and we cut it up, we'd be like, whoa, look at the brain on that thing.
Yeah.
But if you took the mass of the brain and put it into a ratio with the actual mass of the body, our brain to body ratio should be bigger.
Right, okay.
Okay, so each hemisphere has kind of four main areas.
Right, yeah.
So these four lobes would be found on the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, right? So it doesn't matter what side of the brain you're looking at, you should be able to see those kind of four lobes. Okay, and they each have some really specific things that they do. I'm not going through the exhaustive list of all the things that they do, but the things that you need to know, so that if you get, again, a question on a diploma exam that mentions these things, it'll spark your memory to go, I know what part of the brain they're talking about. Okay? So, and I do it through some hand motions. So you can do this with me. If I go like this and I go, oh, I'm such an idiot, I forgot, right? I'm such an idiot, I forgot is a really important statement, because that tells me what this front part, right in the front of my brain, does. So it's the frontal lobe. And what it tells me about is a personality, such an idiot, and I forgot, my memory. And those are two things that are important things that the frontal lobe does. The top part is called the parietal lobe. Parietal, right? It's close to parental. So a lot of parents to their kids will be like, oh, he's such a nice boy. So they're touching the top of your head. And what the kid feels is, I feel warmth because I'm with my parents, and I feel touch.
Right.
So temperature and touch and sensation is what the parietal lobe is responsible for. The occipital lobe, which is at the back, right? In fact, if you touch the back of your skull, there's probably a bump right there. It's called the occipital protuberance, which means it sticks out, a protuberance, at the occipital area. And if you whack that, your eyes pop out, right? Right? And so that's really easy to remember that this has to do with vision.
Oh, okay.
Right? So all our eye information goes from the eyes through a little crossover here and to both sides of the occipital lobes.
Oh, okay.
So the information from your left eye goes through the optic chiasma, which is a little crisscross, and it splits so that the information goes to both occipital lobes.
Oh,
And the information from your right eye does the same.
okay.
So that's why you cannot, well, I've yet to see somebody able to do it, but you cannot take two books and put your hands like this and read two different books at the same time.
Oh, I could never do that.
Because the information from each eye, from your left eye, is going to both sides, and it's right, so it'll just confuse you.
Yeah.
Okay? Temporal lobes, they've heard of maybe your temples.
Yeah.
A lot of people say you get hit in the temples, it could really do lots of damage, it could kill you, right? So if you just take your fingers and you go, or these two, and you go temples, what does the other finger go into?
The ear.
It goes into your ear. So what do you think that has to do with?
Hearing.
Hearing. So that's really, really simplified, but every question that I've seen at this level of biology can be answered if you know that. Because a lot of the questions now, again, would be applying your knowledge that, say if there was damage to some person, maybe in a car accident or something, and their eye seems to be functioning properly, but they can't see, like they're not getting any vision, what part of the brain would it be, right? The occipital lobe, the temporal lobe, parietal lobe, or the frontal lobe. And so you should know that because this part has to do with vision. Okay, and so on and so forth. So those are the lobes of the cerebrum and the functions of those. Now, if we take our sheep brain and dissect it so that we can see inside, we don't just see the cerebrum, we can see the stuff on the inside, then we can identify some other parts. Again, if you study, if you become a neuroscientist, and you're going to know thousands of other parts. Right? But these are the ones that we need to know in a simplified way to help you remember what they do. So this covering, again, we say it's the cerebrum. Sometimes it's called the cerebral cortex.
Okay.
Now there's 3 C's to the brain. Well, there's actually more than that C's, but 3 parts that have C's. Cerebrum, corpus callosum, cerebellum.
Okay.
So those are kind of easy to remember from top to bottom on the outside. So the cerebrum is just simply the thinking part of the brain. Anytime we're referring, you see the words conscious control, conscious thought, right? Something where you're thinking about it, that's up here in the cerebrum.
Okay.
The corpus callosum is that thick band of white matter that you would see when you separate the top of the 2 hemispheres.
Okay.
You would actually see it. It's a connection between there.
Okay.
Now, the reason I say it's a thick band of white matter, that's different than gray matter in the brain. White matter means that the axons are myelinated. So they have myelin on them,
Right.
which makes it kind of glistening and white. And when it does that, it means you get really rapid communication.
Okay.
Okay? Because myelinated nerves conduct faster impulses than unmyelinated nerves.
Right. Okay.
And some of your brain has white matter, and some of your brain has gray matter, and it just looks grayer because it doesn't have that myelin on it.
Okay.
So that's important that it's myelinated because we need rapid communication between the different sides of the brain because there's so many messages going back and forth.
Right. Yeah.
And each side is kind of responsible for a little bit of different stuff. And then we have the cerebellum, which is at the back. Some people call it the little brain. I always remember it if I draw a bell, right? Like Taco Bell, right? Then this is the little clanger. This is a little clanger, right? So it's a bell. and it just has the word bellum in there.
Okay.
And so if you ring the bell and you think about Karate Kid, then you know that that's the cerebellum, and yeah, that's what it's used for.
Okay.
Okay, it's used for balance and muscle coordination.
Okay.
Okay, then working from the bottom up, we see a part called the medulla, which is often just called the medulla, but its full name is the medulla oblongata. Kind of became famous in Adam Sandler's The Waterboy.
Oh, okay.
Talked about the medulla oblongata. So below that is spinal cord,
Right. Okay.
right? And so if your picture says this is the brain, then, and you see a little bump down here, then that's the medulla, okay? Because the spinal cord kind of comes out of the medulla, so, and it would be lower down.
Okay.
The medulla is the autopilot of the brain. So it's going to control those automatic responses from your autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
Okay, and so that what that means is you're not thinking about any of this. This is stuff that's happening to your body that your brain is controlling through the medulla automatically. So autonomic and automatic, I always kind of refer those as they really sound the same because they kind of are. So when your heart rate speeds up or slows down, or your breathing rate speeds up or slows down, it's your medulla that's making those adjustments.
Okay.
Okay, so it's speeding up is usually through sympathetic nerves, and slowing down is usually through parasympathetic nerves
Okay.
from the medulla. Okay, the pons, which is really a big kind of a bump that you see as you go up from the medulla to the brain, and it literally means the bridge in, can't remember, Greek or Latin, right? And it is just a bridge. It's a connection between the medulla, the cerebellum, and the cerebrum. It connects all those and allows for communication between the three main parts.
Okay.
And then we have, as we go up from there, we have a hypothalamus. And I always think about hypothalamus meaning kind of right below the thalamus, right? I don't know, it works for me. And then the thalamus is above it. And so our thalamus, when we dissect a sheep brain, you'll see a kind of like a circular area. Looks like a big O.
Yeah.
And I always say, well, that looks like O for operator. And in the old days, an operator was a person that would take phone calls and direct them to the right place.
Yeah.
In fact, in the old days, there was an operator, quite often a lady sitting by a big machine with a whole bunch of wires, and she'd say, hello. There's a famous, who did that? I forget her name. Ruth Buzzy, I think, was an actress that played an operator. Hello, operator, how may I direct your call? And then she would unplug a wire and plug it back in somewhere else.
Oh, really?
So you're direct, yeah, and that's really how they would actually direct the call. Anyway, that's the operator that's going to direct the calls to every appropriate place in the brain. That's the thalamus's job. So that's why I've always remembered that thalamus is the operator. It directs nerve impulses throughout the brain. Okay? Right below the thalamus is the hypothalamus. And if this is the autopilot and this is the operator, this is the lab. So the laboratory person there is always monitoring everything that's going on in your body. And it's making adjustments as necessary. So for example, it's looking at the blood all the time. And if it's like, whoa, right? Your carbon dioxide level is too high, right? So then it's going to say, hey, we need to make some adjustments. It's going to tell medulla, let's increase the breathing rate, right? In other cases, it's going to monitor and make adjustments on its own. So it's going to help maintain homeostasis in the body. And sometimes it does that by telling its little partner who hangs underneath there, which is the pituitary gland. It tells it to release a hormone that will then act in the body to get the change that it's requiring. Okay? So when you do the endocrine system, that's the master gland that controls a lot of the other glands, and this is the brain, and the two systems interact very, very closely, and that's the main connection between them is the hypothalamus and pituitary. Okay? Hypothalamus is always monitoring stuff. said, hey, I need to make an adjustment, and pituitary, you got anything that will help me make that adjustment and make it last longer?
Oh, okay.
Okay? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes?
Yeah. Cleared a lot of things up, actually.
Brains. Brains.